Let's continue with our comparison of Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile. How is technology changing our wireless networks today? In the previous episode, we were covering Verizon and how it's working on improving its performance in congested areas.
With XLTE, our 4G LTE bandwidth has doubled in over 400 cities.
AT&T and how it's going for scale by adding more and more devices to its network beyond just smartphones, and also adding interesting new features and really going for growth by offering cheaper prices and more data.
It's the same plan for everyone. Families, businesses, whoever.
And in this episode, let's look at both T-Mobile and Sprint and how they're measuring up in the smartphone industry today. So to repeat once again, AT&T definitely did not start this price war. It was T-Mobile that fired the first shots. Today, T-Mobile is the fastest growing wireless company, all because of its uncarrier revolution launched in 2013.
T-Mobile is making big strides in order to try to stand out from the competition.
T-Mobile, they're dropping their contract plan.
It was the first wireless company to lower prices by eliminating contracts, unbundling the price of the smartphone, and even reimbursing customers for their early termination fees if they canceled on other carriers. Today, all of this success gives T-Mobile the breathing room that it needs to test out new services. For example, Music Freedom allows subscribers to stream music without burning up data. Test Drive allows people to test out the T-Mobile network by borrowing an iPhone 5S for up to 7 days. And for people with Wi-Fi calling devices, they can get free in-flight texting on airplanes. T-Mobile is also the first network to support voice over LTE across its entire nationwide network.
Hey Neville, Happy New Year! We've been to some shows.
and my blackjack streak definitely continues. I'll call you when back in Seattle. Cheers.
And remember, while AT&T and Verizon bet big on low-frequency spectrum when they were rolling out their LTE networks, T-Mobile bet on higher frequency AWS spectrum, and this has a couple of advantages. You might remember from past episodes that higher frequencies offer better speeds and better performance in dense urban areas. The problem is they don't really perform well when propagating through walls or across long distances. So T-Mobile is doing a couple of things to address this problem. First, Wi-Fi calling helps in the short term, where subscribers with compatible phones can place and receive phone calls through their Wi-Fi router networks at home. But what if you don't have a router? Well, under its personal cell spot program, T-Mobile subscribers get a free 802.11 AC dual-band router for use at home. But the most important thing T-Mobile can do is buy more low-frequency spectrum. In the past episode, I talked about how Verizon and T-Mobile swapped spectrum. T-Mobile basically traded spectrum with Verizon and paid them $2 billion to get access to some 700 megahertz spectrum that they need to patch up their network. And now that T-Mobile doesn't have to worry about being acquired by Sprint, it's going to spend the next year focusing on building out its rural capacity with this new lower frequency spectrum, and also refarming some of its Metro PCS spectrum onto LTE to enhance its network. So now that revenue and margin are both ticking upwards, T-Mobile may just pull off one of the greatest comebacks in the wireless industry. Finally, let's talk about Sprint. You'll notice from these graphs I've been posting that T-Mobile's gains correlate really closely with Sprint's losses. Sprint has been consistently losing money, revenue is really shaky, and customer satisfaction has been really low. And for the past 2 years, Sprint has been investing a lot of time and energy trying to acquire T-Mobile. But then the FCC basically told Sprint over the summer that it wants 4 Tier 1 national US carriers. So now, Sprint is forced to regroup. Fortunately, Sprint has a lot of spectrum on its side. The new Sprint Spark program will enable LTE on 3 different bands, but this rollout is taking a lot longer than expected. So in the meantime, it seems the Sprint strategy is to fight a price war. The problem with a price war is you really have to make sure you have the lowest price at the same level of quality. After SoftBank acquired Sprint, the new owners replaced the CEO with someone who did away with the complicated family plan promotions, began the painful process of laying off thousands of workers, simplified the promotions and offers, and is in the process of changing out the executive leadership. The exclusive Sharp Aquos Crystal and the latest iPhone 6 promotions really highlight how the company is relying on device-specific promotions. Also, nationwide HD calling should improve call quality among Sprint subscribers. And now that Sprint is barely profitable, the new CEO has a little bit of leverage to continue improving its LTE network. But basically, Sprint has a lot of catching up to do. So to wrap things up, the net neutrality debate really highlights how much power the FCC has over the communications industry in the US. But I think in the wireless industry, the FCC is actually helping more than it's hurting because it controls one of the most valuable inputs in the wireless industry: spectrum. Mobile data usage is set to grow exponentially over the next several years. Wireless spectrum is basically like the lanes on a highway. Carriers get the ability to control certain lanes when they purchase spectrum licenses, and right now, we are witnessing one of the largest spectrum auctions in US history. Already at over $36 billion, this auction is set to be over twice the amount of the 700 megahertz auction back in 2008. And it seems that it's Verizon, AT&T, and Dish Network that are battling for this mid-frequency piece of real estate. In the meantime, T-Mobile is bidding for some, and Sprint is just staying on the sidelines, which makes sense because both these companies do have their own reserves of high-frequency spectrum already. And the next big auction for lower-frequency 600 megahertz spectrum has been pushed back to 2016, which gives the carriers plenty of time to regroup and recapitalize themselves to get ready. And wireless carriers aren't the only ones involved in this auction. Both Google and Microsoft are currently lobbying the FCC to set aside some of this low-frequency spectrum for some innovative white space use, paving the way for some future Wi-Fi or Bluetooth technologies. Meanwhile, all of the carriers are getting ready to spend some big bucks, and a question I always ask myself before I sign up for any long-term service: will the company be able to invest in improving this service throughout the life of my contract? After Verizon bought Vodafone out, it now controls all of its cash flow, ready to make some really big investments. If AT&T acquires DirecTV, it'll also have access to a bunch of cash. And T-Mobile brilliantly and profitably executed one of the most glorious price wars I've seen, and still maintains enough cash to offer new innovative features. And unfortunately, Sprint is really just trying to stop the bleeding by keeping prices low and focusing on exclusive smartphone promotions. So this finally wraps up our broad overview of the US wireless industry and how carriers are working to improve their networks. But like with real estate, all network performance is local, so if you're wondering how particular carriers perform in your area, definitely check out the route metrics link below, where you can input where you live and see how the carriers stack up against each other in terms of performance, reliability, speeds, and so forth. And this time I've also linked each carrier's website below because promotions are constantly changing, and now during the holiday season it's really a hot topic among carriers to compete against each other for promotions, prices, and gaining subscribers. So definitely check out those links below. And if you're thinking of buying a smartphone, don't forget to check the Amazon links below for the best prices. So that wraps up this episode of Network Wars. Thank you for all your support, for watching the channel, for all of your comments, feedback. Let me know if you have any questions down below. This was finally long overdue. I'm glad to really get this episode out of the way. I'll be working and researching future episodes for you guys. If you have any questions, leave them below. And again, thank you for supporting the channel as we continue to look at how technology changes things.